three dogs, an American dog and a Polish dog and a Russian dog. They were all having a visit, and the American dog was telling them about how things were in this country. He said, you know, you bark long enough, and then somebody comes along and gives you some meat. And the Polish dog said, what's meat? The Russian dog says, what's bark?
Good morning. It is Wednesday, January the 11th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the Star-Spangled Banner, we will have airlines, McCarthy, legal advice, Republican rules changes, 15 items to Hoard, and the epilogue from the book Jinx. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Your heart. Face your parents. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing and remove your hats for the national anthem of the United States of America.
How soon can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam? Whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight on the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets sang the most bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does the star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free
Thank you. And now there's no free lunch, 250 economic truths by David-Bahnsen.
If you know the position a person takes on taxes, you can tell their whole philosophy. The tax code, once you get to know it, embodies all the essence of life: greed, politics, power, goodness, charity. Sheldon S. Cohen. It is sad but true. Does one see coercion as a means of effecting charity? You will see it in their view of taxes. Does one hold to a high view of self-government or a low view that requires an ever-growing state to assume those duties? You will see it in their view of taxes.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David-Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. So on the Department of Transportation's failure to regulate the airline industry, again, as a true conservative, I want value. I want to get my money's worth. I'd rather not have regulation because I think it's just a bunch of BS. It's based on the idea that human beings that work for government are more trustworthy than human beings that work for businesses. And it's ridiculous on its face. But I've been outvoted. Everybody wants regulations, and I can kind of see the psychology of it. That does seem kind of, spooky, if you will, to have big businesses, corporations that are controlling billions of dollars running around loose doing whatever it is that they see fit, almost. Because we are a nation of laws. So they're not allowed to break the laws. If they do, then they are going to have to face justice. But anyways, if we're going to regulate, then let's regulate, because not all of us are paying. I'm not paying, say, airlines. I don't travel all that much, and so I'm not paying into airlines. I wasn't inconvenienced by all the shutdowns that happened today, but I am paying the federal government to, in part, regulate. And that's what the Department of Transportation is supposed to be all about. And the FAA, they're supposed to be about regulating the airline industries. How are you going to be able to do that if you can't get your house in order computer-wise? There's been all kinds of different excuses, outdated information or outdated software or hardware or whatever. And again, when are you going to get your act together and get the updated hardware, the updated software? I demand value for my money. If I'm going to pay for regulation, I want regulation. You better do a damn good job. Okay, and if you're a Democrat or you're a Democrat-leaning independent, you need to become a true conservative. You need to vote Republican, because we're the party that demands value for our dollars, for our tax dollars. Back in a minute. Thank you. So Kevin McCarthy is Speaker of the House, and whoop-de-doo, he's the biggest alligator in the swamp, as Matt Getz said. Now, they had the opportunity, what do they call themselves? The Freedom Caucus. 20 members of the House Freedom Caucus had a chance to exercise true power and make sure that Kevin McCarthy stays off of does not get the speaker's gavel, but they failed. They got chickened out. They got scared, because again, wielding power is not for sissies. It's not for sissies. But I think they're going to find out later. Right now, it seems like Kevin McCarthy's doing what he promised to do. But I think that on down the line, they're going to rue the day they let him get anywhere near that gavel. So one of the things that I do like that he did is he took three people, Ilhan Omar, Swalwell, and Schiff, and said, you're not going to have any committee assignments. And I think that's absolutely fabulous. I don't like any one of those people. I don't like their personalities, and I don't like their character either. Ilhan Omar is reputed to have married her brother in order to be able to stay into the country so she could cheat her way into a citizenship or a green card status or whatever it is that she needed to get into and stay into the country, and then turns around and stabs the country in the back. Then you have Swalwell, who had an affair with a Chinese spy, and then pretends that it doesn't even have the decency to resign. He just pretends like nothing has happened. And then Adam Schiff, the liar of all liars. I mean, he makes Joe Biden look like a saint. So it's a smart move on McCarthy's part. Also, it's a little bit vindictive, and I like vindictiveness. When I'm the one that's being vindictive, or my people are being vindictive, I like it. And Mr. McCarthy is doing the right thing. So again, I don't like these folks. I don't like their personality. I don't like their character. And I'm glad that Mr. McCarthy has kept them off committees. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little clip from Forbes News about, and it's actually what it is a clip of the action on the floor of the House of Representatives where Republicans are unveiling some rules changes.
Time is reserved. Gentleman from Oklahoma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to begin by thanking my good friend from Massachusetts for his leadership of the Rules Committee over the last 4 years. While we certainly haven't always agreed, we've tried to always be agreeable working with one another. And I certainly associate myself with his remarks about the terrific work of the staff on both sides of the aisle for helping us facilitate the operation of the House over that 4-year period. I look forward again to working with my friend in the years ahead. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to offer the rules resolution that will govern the House during the 118th Congress. Determining the rules we will follow is one of the first and most consequential decisions we must make as a body at the beginning of each Congress. In many ways, the rules of the House of Representatives serve to demonstrate where our priorities and our values lie as an institution. And make no mistake, the priorities of the new Republican majority are fully on display in this resolution. First and foremost, Mr. Speaker, we're taking action to reopen the People's House and to ensure that we, the people, elected servants, are here in Washington, D.C., doing our jobs. For far too long, the House allowed members to do their jobs from home without ever setting foot in Washington. What started out as a pandemic accommodation lasted far longer than necessary. But today, even President Biden admits that the pandemic is over. It's time for the House of Representatives to return to our normal operating procedures, and it's time for the members of Congress to actually show up to work. Today's rule package eliminates proxy voting and puts an end to remote committee proceedings. We restore the requirement for committees to establish plans for how they will conduct much-needed oversight. Republicans have robust plans to ensure that we will hold the Biden administration accountable for its actions. But being a counterbalance to the administration will not stop there. With today's rule package, we will also establish a new select subcommittee modeled on the Church Committee to investigate the radical left's weaponization of the federal government in recent years. We will also modify the jurisdiction of the select subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic to ensure we investigate the origins of the virus and finally look into the financial and societal impacts of shutdowns. And we will establish a select committee on strategic competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party to respond to threats posed by the CCP, ensure economic competitiveness for America, and protect human rights. Other important changes in this resolution are those that are designed to address our out-of-control spending problem, which the former majority made vastly worse last Congress. In fact, when Democrats were in control of this chamber, they spent so much money through partisan bills that they managed to drive this country into an inflationary crisis. But those aren't my words. Those are the words of former Clinton Treasury Secretary Larry Summers. The American people elected Republicans to get our fiscal house in order, and get our fiscal house in order we will. That starts with making key changes to House rules to ensure we still will instill some fiscal sanity in Congress. These changes reflect a return to budgetary rules that were in place for over a decade before Democrats removed them. We will restore the cut-go rule, which requires us to offset any increase in mandatory spending with a corresponding cut in mandatory spending. No more will the House be able to use budget gimmicks and tricks to pretend increases in mandatory spending are paid for when they actually are not. We will restore a requirement for 3/5 majority to approve any tax rate increase. If this rule had been in place, the House would not have passed the massive tax increases the Democrats included in last year's reconciliation bill. We will eliminate the so-called Gephardt rule, which allows the House to automatically suspend the debt ceiling upon passage of a budget resolution. Just as the American people have to live within their means, so too should the federal government. Automatically suspending the debt limit may be the easy and expedient way, But no matter as important as the national debt limit, what is easy and expedient is hardly appropriate. The American people expect us to make a decision on the national debt limit only after full and fair consideration and debate in the House. That starts with ensuring it will receive a separate standalone vote on the floor. Finally, we will remove the rule that allowed Democrats to simply ignore budget estimates for bills dealing with the COVID pandemic or climate change. Though it may sound controversial to my friends on the other side of the aisle, Republicans cannot and will not thrust our heads in the sand and ignore the effects of out-of-control federal spending. Mr. Speaker, I could go on and on, but on the whole, I'm very proud of today's rules package. It reflects Republican priorities and priorities of the voters who elected us. It reopens this institution and ensures that all members will be in Washington to do their work as our constituents expect.
And that was the Republicans unveiling some rules changes on the House floor. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, a little piece of legal advice from our favorite attorney, the Northern Virginia Legal Advice.
The channel, Wayne has written in with a question. He wants to know whether it's legal to place a film over your license plate. These are commercially available films that tend to obscure the license plate from cameras. Many people, myself included, feel that red light cameras and speeding cameras are unconstitutional. Sadly, the Supreme Court of the United States and the Supreme Court of Virginia do not agree. So it turns out they're legal. Now, these devices, these films, are pretty popular, and they're fairly inexpensive. You can just put them on your plate, and while anyone can look at your plate and read it, cameras have a hard time picking up the numbers on your license plate. So the answer is probably exactly what you expected. No, they are not legal. There is a Virginia statute that specifically addresses these and makes it illegal. It's a $25 fine if you're found with this on your plate. The good news is the judge is allowed to dismiss the charge if you can prove that it's been removed from your license plate. So while I really understand the impulse to hide your license plate from these cameras, which I think are invasive and just a terrible idea in American society, that ain't the law. So don't put these on your plates. Hope that answers your question, Wayne. I hope you have a great day.
And that was Northern Virginia Legal Advice about red light cameras and the film. I've seen it like in a spray can, spraying your license plate with a film to obscure it. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, from the account on YouTube called Survival Dispatch, 15 items every prepper should hoard.
Comes to prepping and survival, there are items that really you need to kind of stock up on or hoard, if that's a good word for it. There are certain items that you will just continually need, and it's very important in a grid down situation to have those items. So today we're going to take a look at 15 items. There are a lot more, but these to me are my top 15. And guys, if you're serious about prepping and survival, check out Survival Dispatch Insider, one of the best resources on the web, some of the top names in the survival world. We upload exclusive videos there every week. I'll have a link down below in the description. Check it out. One of the big items that you want to stock up is toilet paper. Now, toilet paper is big and it's clunky. The rolls are thick. But having toilet paper, there's not really a good substitute. That's this inexpensive. We always try to buy these 12 packs and then just stock them up. But definitely toilet paper, to me, is one of the first. Duct tape. Of course, you've got your standard duct tape, and we have Gorilla Tape, which is great. I would be careful buying some of the lesser expensive or the lesser known brands just because you want something that's really going to hold. If you're needing duct tape, you really need it to stick. Now, the U.S. military uses 100-mile-an-hour tape. That is also excellent. Comes in a lot of different colors. This is just a few rolls that I have, but I try to keep extra duct tape, in a good place that doesn't get too hot because you don't want this to become sticky and unusable. Fire is something that's essential in a survival situation. One big thing that I like to do is when I'm, in line at Walmart or wherever, I grab a pack of lighters, and I just throw them in the bag, and I keep these. I've got a container where I keep all these different lighters. I like Bic. They just seem to work most of the time, but I also keep a lot of matches. Strike Anywhere matches are my preferred choice, but I do use regular standard matches as well. Box type is what I like. Of course, stormproof matches really are probably the best. I mean, that's really what you need. What I like is this little container. It does keep the matches themselves in this container all waterproof. So even though they are stormproof and you do have a little tinder, and you do have a striker right here on the side. So, this is just another way. Now, of course, these are a lot more expensive than your standard matches, so you can really stock up on these. But I would definitely have some stormproof matches. Of course, here's one of my fire kits, and I have my, ferrocerium rod and different fire tenders and things like that. But typically, as far as stocking up, matches and lighters are really what I try to stock up on. Batteries are definitely something to have on hand. Really, Duracell to me last longer than any of the other batteries, for me, including Energizer. And so I've always keep these handy. And then also the CR123s, I use those in a lot of my flashlights, and in a lot of my optics, we have different small batteries, like watch battery types. The 2032s are a big one. All these boxes have the 2032s. I buy a lot of those on eBay in bulk packs. Also, the CR123s, rechargeable batteries, have a recharger, but over long term, you may not have power, and so I don't really depend too heavily on my rechargeable batteries. The CR123s will last up to 10 years shelf life. Of course, your standard Duracell, AA's and AAA's, guaranteed to last for 10 years. And honestly, guys, we live in an electronic age. We're always needing batteries anyway, so it's good to have a stockpile. Flashlights are good for any time. One of the things about light is it is your number one security tool. So you want to definitely have flashlights, and of course this goes along with the batteries. And sometimes, you have the old school, like this old mag light. This can be used as a baton for self-defense, but so can this Olight Warrior X. With the crenulated bezel. In fact, flashlights are number one for a self-defense weapon. So that is one thing. But there's a ton of different choices. Headlamps, your old military surplus flashlights. Again, this is a little more of an advanced headlight by Zebra Light. And then you've got also like lanterns. And so this can be used as a flashlight, but we can also use it as a light, in certain situations where a candle just doesn't work. And this compacts down. It's really easy to carry. Then here at the front, then you have a flashlight here. So there's so many different choices, but here's the reason why you need to hoard some flashlights. If something goes wrong with a flashlight, which they tend to do, they're electronics, you have extras, you have backups. And with light, again, being your number one security tool, it's important to have light. Candles, a big one. We just had our power out the other night, had a transformer to blow. We had a ton of candles. We were able to light the house up fine without using undue power from our flashlights, etc. Of course, we had our flashlights and we could use those, but the different type candles, even tea light candles, there's a lot of different options. These are just really inexpensive candle options. Of course, my wife gets the big ones. You can get the 12-hour candles. There's a lot of different choices, but you can start out cheap and build from there. And guys, who hasn't had their power out at some point? Unscented bleach not only cleans, keeps things clean, but also you can purify water. And that's probably the most important part of bleach. You need to make sure, again, that it is unscented. And you can go with a brand name, or here I have just a, generic. We have two big Berkeys, so we can definitely stay in drinking water. But having the bleach serves so many different purposes. Plastic bags. One of the big things about plastic bags, especially these contractor bags, and typically I get these at Home Depot, they are heavy meal. They are awesome. I keep them in my go bag. They can be used as a tarp. They can be used as a poncho. I mean, it can be used to carry stuff. I mean, there's a ton of different things that these trash bags will do, and the heavy meal are the best to really stock up on. But we do use the standard compact bags as well. There may be times where we need them. And so having some kind of bag, you can just throw things in it. You can haul it. I mean, there's so many different things. And really, guys, try to get some of the best bags that are out there, the real tough ones. You don't want something falling out. But again, bags, all different types, but the contractor bags to me are number one. Along with the same theme of trash bags, keeping these small little grocery bags can be really useful, especially hauling things. You can load a bunch of stuff in here, especially small items, and then you can carry it. So this is something that's really easy. Of course, it's cheap because you get them for free, and there's a lot of different ways that you can store these to keep them out of the way. Definitely a useful item are tarps, and we just get the standard tarps. They're fairly inexpensive, with the eyelets, and then we have the heavy-duty tarps. These are really good. And then here I have a camo tarp, and I like to keep them in the plastic if we're storing them, just to kind of keep it nice and clean. But we even have canvas tarps that we use, and a number of different types. And this is something that I definitely want to keep plenty of. If you have some kind of environmental accident, maybe your house, a tree limb goes through it, you can put this over it. A vehicle, you can put tarp over it if you have a window to break. But then just covering up things. There's so many uses for tarps. Laying this down on the ground if you're in a bug out situation. I mean, these can even create a lean-to. They can create a shelter. Again, guys, there's just so many things you can do with tarps. Socks, another great item to be able to hoard. Definitely we wear through socks. I mean, they can go out fairly easily. And so a good pair of quality socks will last longer. But, if you really want to, and of course, there's so many different choices too with the different materials. Here we have some Keens, and these have their wool. These are excellent. Then we have just some sports socks. But the main thing is, having socks is going to protect your feet, and you need to be able to protect your feet. One of the things about the homeless is that is the number one item they need, and it's the least donated item. So just a little side note with socks. Go buy some socks, take it to your local shelter or, Goodwill or something like that and donate them. But first, hoard some for yourself. Salt's definitely another one of those things that you need to store, but you need to keep it in a cool, dry place. You don't want it to clump up. But, there are reasons why we buy salt licks if we have livestock. They need salt. You need salt. It has to be part of your diet. I like salt with iodine in it. Of course, you need iodine, so this really helps. You do have a lot of salt in foods. But in a grid down situation, you're not going to have as much processed food, so there's not going to be as much salt. So keeping salt's a no-brainer. Guys, most of the seed that you find at the store is non-GMO, but it's hybrid seed. And so what happens is it doesn't reproduce. Finding some heirloom seeds are really key to long-term survival. Being able to not only plant, but also to harvest the seeds once the plants, have died down in the fall. And so getting your seeds, going ahead and getting you a garden. Guys, it's really crazy to try to plant a garden for the first time after an SHTF situation or after grid down. And so for long term, this is the only item really that pertains to food, but this is your self-sustaining way to keep food on the table. Non-hybrid seeds, and there's a ton of different places you can get these. Guys, there's a lot of things that run on propane. Here we have a couple of the small little camping propane cylinders. But of course, those that are on your grills, having extras, having them filled up. We always keep about 4 or 5 that are filled at all times in case we need them. And then we keep a supply of these smaller ones. And there's a lot of different things that you can attach to these. So definitely, this is a great way to be able to have some kind of fuel. It's actually pretty stable. Now, going a little old school with a lantern can give you some light, and it's refillable with either your lamp oil. You can put kerosene in it. You can put different things to be able to run this. So the big thing that you need to hoard are lamp wicks and lamp oil, or at least try to have some on hand. But the wicks are definitely important. You may be able to find oil or something to burn in your lantern, but without the wick, it's not going to do you any good. Also, if you have Coleman lanterns, the mantles having those stocked up also is a huge plus. Guys, cordage, you can definitely use cordage in a lot of different ways. It is one of the elements for a survival kit. Paracord seems to be the most versatile. One of the big reasons is because true paracord is the 550 cord, which means it's rated up to 550 pounds. 7-strand cord means that there are 7 strands inside here that you can utilize. And so, obviously, the military's been using this forever, but civilians as well. This stuff is gold. So make sure that you have plenty of paracord. I have tons of this stuff, and I'll tell you what, I use it all the time. And guys, obviously, having a stock of water and food and those things, that's really a no-brainer. Guys, last but not least, medical supplies. I mean, you need to keep the essentials, whether it's, gauze, tape, splint material. Here we have one of the AMP3. This is the Outfitters kit. This thing is like a clinic in a roll. This thing is awesome. It's not cheap, but guys, I'll tell you, it has all the essentials. Of course, USN ER Doc is a emergency room doctor that puts this together. I've got reviews on this and a lot of other things, so I don't want to really get too much into it. Having a tourniquet, chest seals, just a lot of different things. You have some scissors. We have a ton of things in here. This is actually from Skinny Medic, and that's another one, Medical Outfitters. Definitely a great source for your medical gear. And guys, if your child is injured and you need to get help, or your wife or those you love, you definitely need to have some supplies on hand, because medical emergency services may not be around. And then definitely your boo-boo kits, which are Band-Aids, antibiotic ointments, regular gauze, things like that. So having a good, well-stocked medical kit and adding to it regularly is just smart. Now, definitely there are other items, and down in the description would be a great place for you to put those items. A lot of people look through the comments, and it makes it really nice to be able to help one another down there. I mean, this is a community, and we help one another. So the reason why I bring these videos, guys, is for you to be prepared. Hopefully there was some things on this list that maybe you hadn't thought about, but obviously down in the comments is a great place to take care of the ones I didn't think about.
And that was 15 items every prepper should hoard from Survival Dispatch. I play it because there's people that have asked, number one, what should I do? And so, of course, the answer to that question is be prepared. And then there's the people that have asked, particularly Rush Limbaugh when he was alive, when do we panic? And the answer to that question is you don't panic. You get prepared. And what I'm suggesting here is that this is a good idea because you need to make a list. And I think it's the first thing that you should do. Make a list of the items that you're going to need, and this should give you some ideas of what to put on the list. Then if it's basically a list of things for natural or man-made disasters. And so things start shaping up like there's going to be a disaster. You can start putting the items from this list into your garage or whatever. So back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the epilogue from Jinx.
Log. The call to Blackford to come to the office of Anthony Trust was uncharacteristic. The summons at James Street, where Blackford was closing the file on Operation Oxford, was delivered through a junior officer, when normally Trust would have made the phone call himself. It specified a meeting that afternoon at 3:03, pursuant to the convention not to make appointments at round-numbered times. Blackford had an idea what it was all about, and wondered only at the delay. The end for Bert Heath had come on Tuesday, and it was already Thursday. Neither Rufus nor Anthony had called him when he got back to James Street. He had written out and sent to Trust, his next-in-command, a report on the events of Tuesday night. And they were both there, Rufus and Anthony. Anthony Trust sat behind his desk, Rufus on the small couch to the right, Blackford on the couch opposite. Trust began. Nice going on following Heath. Thanks. Crowded day it was. I gather it was crowded also in Moscow. Do we know anything about Fleetwood? No. He has been reported missing at sea by the Swedes. The Brits haven't decided whether to tell them. They know he got off that boat and flew to Helsinki and on to Moscow. They'll have to decide that. It was their men keeping an eye on him. We don't even know if the Swedes have located the boat captain. If they find him, they'll get it from him that he was just hired to take Fleetwood up to Österskar, where Fleetwood disembarked that same afternoon. That means Fleetwood is still in Russia, obviously. Yes, no way of telling whether he is in or out of grace. If he was associated only with Berya, I pity him. Berya dead? We think so, but we don't know. Rufus spoke. We had an asset in Moscow, but he's gone now, so we're only putting two and two together. Malyenkov's speech yesterday to the Parliament didn't sound like the speech of somebody who was afraid to go home. Did you tell the Brits about the designs on him? No, not after the message you got from Bolgin Monday that the plan was off. We interpret that as meaning that the Berya power play collapsed. But we did warn them that high security would be a good idea, as we had picked up rumors. Anything on the girl? Fleetwood's contact, the American? No, we'll cool that one for a bit. Wait to hear from her parents. They'll start asking about her, and then we can get our embassy to inquire. Exciting times, Blackford said. Right, Black. Exciting times at Cromwell, too, I gather. Yes, was all that Blackford volunteered. Sir Jean told us yesterday they're going to hold a hearing. They want you there as a witness. Blackford noticed that Rufus was looking at him with that pale blue X-ray look. He said, When? The meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday, 10 a.m. Well, you've seen my report. Anthony opened the manila folder. Yes. His eyes ran over it. You say, quote, After the commandos left Heath in the radio shed, there was a loud rumpus, and then a shot, and evidently Heath made a move to escape, but was shot by Joe Louis. What did you mean by evidently? Blackford pursed his lips. For a moment he had a wild desire to smile. Here he was cat-and-mousing about the death of an acknowledged traitor with his oldest friend, both of them allies in a very tough business. But formalities were of substantive importance in almost every situation. And so Blackford said, I had the evidence of my ears, and there was no doubt there was a shot. I was there to see Heath's body, and there isn't any doubt there was a bullet in his head. Blackford, Rufus interrupted, tell me yes or no, one thing. Did you kill Bertram Heath? No, Rufus, I did not. Rufus looked over at Anthony and gave a signal. Anthony responded, Black, would you go out to the library, please? Blackford rose, opened the door, and walked into the dark library, with the bare, empty desk and reading light. Spread over it was an open copy of the morning's Times. Blackford sat down and turned to the crossword puzzle, pulling a pencil out of his pocket. He had no trouble with famous physicist, 4 letters. He tried R-A-B-I. And for government agency, why not CIA? He loved, after zwei, writing in confidently, D-R-E-I. Harem rooms? If he could only get that Lollapalooza 12 letters down, like Pearl White's Rescuers. Pearl White? Who in the hell was Pearl White? What might be said of her rescuers, whoever they were? Obviously, the rescue operation had worked if she was rescued. His pencil flew down to try it out. I-N-T-H-E-N-I-C-K-O-F-T-I-M-E. Anthony was there. Come on in, Black. They sat down as before. Rufus spoke. Blackford, we had, as you know, intended that you should stay here for the next period to help out, to work with Anthony. But something has come up elsewhere, and you will need to go to Washington for a briefing. Yes, sir, Blackford said. I shall advise Sir Jean that, unfortunately, you will not be in London for the hearing, but that we have interrogated you, and that you had no hand in the killing of Bertram Heath. That you interrogated me, and that I did not kill Bertram Heath. That you did not kill Bertram Heath, nor bore any responsibility for the accident. Blackford let it rest. Trust got up. A little tea, gentlemen. Oh, one thing, Rufus, Blackford said. Though it's a gruesome reminder of what happened to his brother, Joe Louis would like a copy of the album. MI6 told him that was up to us, that the original is U.S. property. Can I send him one? Rufus hesitated. If he wants one, let him have it. He is security cleared. Besides, there's nothing in the album the Soviet Union doesn't know. That's right, Rufus. Nothing in the album right now they don't know about. Someday. He was following Anthony Trust and Rufus out the door. We'll find out, maybe, how come they sent that thing in. Someday, Rufus said, we will find out a lot of things. Someday I hope there'll be some things we still haven't found out. During tea, they watched on television Queen Caroline greeting Premier Malyenkov at Windsor Castle. Queen Caroline looked radiant. So did Malyenkov. This concludes the reading of High Jinx by William F. Buckley, Jr. This book was read by Christopher Hurt.
And that was the epilogue from High Jinx by William F. Buckley, Jr. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. Until next time, remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.